So I'm starting the recording and welcome. We are in week 4, which means you're halfway through the first class, which should feel good. One of the things I often tell students to do is to celebrate every milestone. You know, when you finish a class, it's a milestone. When you get halfway through the program, it's a milestone. When you're 75% through the program, it's a milestone. And if you set yourself those little goals, you get to feel really good about what you're accomplishing. So you're halfway through your first class. Okay, so for the agenda tonight, I'm going to go over some reminders. I'm going to talk about week 3, and the majority of the time is going to be spent on the week 4 paper because this is your first APA paper in a graduate level program, or course rather. All right, so just some information by the numbers. 44% of the postings this week were on Saturday and Sunday. 35% of the class didn't earn all the points until Sunday. 10% of the postings earned a U, which means that it does not count towards your number of required postings. The reasons for it is that postings were based solely on experience or opinion. Postings did not meet the word count minimums, and initial responses did not use a citation and reference. 15% of the postings didn't use sources, and 10% were initial responses. Warning, warning. Points will not be earned starting this week if the initial responses do not have a citation and reference. That the requirement for that there are 2 responses to my initial posted questions, responses that are solely based on opinion or experience, follow-up postings that are too conversational. In other words, everything was, I did this, my experience is. That a web source was the only reference, and a reference without citation or a citation without a reference. So I think for those of you who are on the call, that is not an issue, but it may be for the people who are listening to the video afterwards. Don't forget, assignment deadline is 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. Faculty only have to be on 5 days a week. I tend to be on 7, but not everyone will be. The last time I check in on Monday is around 10 p.m. So if you have questions about an assignment due on Monday night, it's really a good idea to ask it earlier than Monday night. Problems or issues should be brought up earlier. And anyone who is not in class for 2 days, for 2 consecutive weeks, automatically gets dropped from the course. I have absolutely no control over that. Things I just don't understand. I don't understand why people would participate in the session or watch the video and not post in the thread. I don't understand why people would have a non-substantive response in the thread. It's too short, it's too conversational. I don't understand why people, when they get into class, aren't posting at least twice. If you do 3 times, every time you log in, you're done in 3 days with 1 extra posting, just in case you get a U. I don't understand why I see the same mistakes from week to week, and I really don't understand why people are not using sources on all of their postings. I also don't understand why people don't review written feedback and do not look just beyond the points. The points don't mean anything if you don't look at the feedback. Why is it better to paraphrase than to quote? The main reason is that when you quote something, you have demonstrated that you can find a quote. If you paraphrase or summarize, you demonstrate that you understand it. You demonstrate that you can apply it to what we're talking about. You demonstrate a graduate level understanding of what you're talking about. Quoting just shows that you can find quotes. So at the graduate level, we're really looking for paraphrasing and summarizing and not just finding quotes. So some feedback on the presentations that I sent out the feedback. I finished it about 7:30 tonight. I was looking for you to address all of the requirements comprehensively, demonstrate an understanding of course concepts, and you've seen this before, the depth and details, application and analysis, and insights, that you use relevant, credible, and reliable sources, which are not blogs. Not all websites are relevant or credible. I was also looking for you to use a PowerPoint template and or some color. I was looking for slides that were balanced with both pictures and text. Slides that are too many pictures are harder to follow. Slides that are all text are not as fun to look at, not as interesting. The required slides were the title, the agenda or introduction, the summary or conclusion, question, and references. Several people left out the summary or conclusion, a few left off the agenda, and if anything was left off, it tended to be the question slides. I was so pleased when I started grading the PowerPoint presentations because so many people use speaker notes. And then after the first few grading, everybody else used the speaker notes. The voiceover is certainly more interesting for me to listen to than to read note pages. There was no deduction if you chose to use speaker notes versus voiceover. Trying to remember who it was who said, Jean, I think it was you. You said that you were happy to do the presentation to get over some of your fear of presenting, and you did the voiceover. And to me, one of the major drawbacks of doing an online education is that you don't get to do the presentations and overcome some of that fear. So doing the voiceover is a great way to at least get some of that experience under your belt through the program. I was looking for you to follow the slide guidelines. Rule of 6, no sentences, no paragraphs. Rule of 6 is 6 words per line, 6 lines per slide. First word, consistency. Not writing in all caps and using a light rather than a dark background. I said this about balance of text and illustrations. Make sure you check your grammar, spelling, word usage, and create 3 to 5 word headings. Don't use the whole direction as a heading. Don't use the whole direction as what you're covering when you're listing an agenda. Okay, so this is my confused face. I don't understand why somebody would change the template for each slide, have a different Microsoft Office template for each slide. I don't know why someone would write in a hard-to-read font style and size. You can see that I put a different font in here, and I put it at 20 points. It's harder to read. PowerPoint presentations are not a paper in bullets. So it shouldn't look like a paper. It should look like a presentation. So some people wrote out long sentences, long paragraphs, put a picture on it. That's not a presentation. That's a paper put in PowerPoint. The default font is often a bad font. I had mentioned that last week to try and avoid those default fonts. And some people picked template colors that were jarring and hard on the eyes. So consider your audience when you're picking a template, when you're picking the colors that you're going to use, when you pick the font size that you're going to use. Make sure everything is readable to anyone who is looking at it. All right, so some feedback on participation. I've said this before, depth, details, and insights do more than quote. Please use some white space. It makes it so much easier to read. I've given you the information before about how you do a citation for the textbook. Use sources other than just the video for a video-based question. Apply and analyze rather than report. And if you need more information about substantive, it's in week 1 required. All right, so now the papers. These are the topics I'm going to cover: writing, citations, headings, references, sources, best practice, and some sample reference listings for you. So these are some of the APA rules. Do not use you, your, first person, or contractions. That is an APA rule. No, you, your, first person, or contractions. Already mentioned paraphrasing rather than quoting. Superlatives, I've mentioned this before. Every, all, never, always. Those are Rarely true, difficult to prove, get them out of your papers. Don't use those words. Very is overused and unnecessary. If it's important, it's important. Very important doesn't make it any more important. Very critical doesn't make it any more critical. And the one that always makes me laugh is very unique. Unique means it's one of a kind. So how could very make it any more unique? Phrases that you want to avoid. In order to, just use to. Due to the fact that, just use since. Nowadays, just use today. Avoid generalities like the entire world or everyone in the world believes this. How do you know what everyone in the world believes? You can't prove that. And don't tell me that your idea is great. Don't use evaluative adjectives. Let me decide if it's great. Don't you tell me this is a great way to do something or it's a great idea. Check the use of apostrophe. People constantly make this mistake, meaning that a company's vision statement is apostrophe S. Companies means more than one company. So make sure that you check the use of apostrophe. That's one of the places a lot of people make mistakes. Avoid unnecessary phrases. When it comes to, as well as, you don't need those. Try to avoid ending sentences with prepositions, words like into, on, with, from. Rhetorical questions are not good to use in formal writing papers. Use the author, not the publication. If you're going to say according to, it's always according to the author if provided. Check for wordos, cliches, and redundancies, and I'm going to explain those right now. Wordos. Wordos are words that are spelled correctly, but they're the wrong word. You wouldn't believe how many mangers work in companies. And since you're talking about different kinds of leadership, manger is one that likely to see. Whether and whether, there and there, cite, then and than is a big one that people mix up. Then is sequential, than is comparison. If somebody loses something, it has one O. If something is loose, it's got two. So watch for these wordos. These is just an example. There's so many more of these. Complement and complement, effect and affect. Cliches. These are phrases that we use them all the time in speaking, but they're really bad in writing. Last but not least, first and foremost, easier said than done. In this day and age, the rest is history. Read between the lines. Get rid of cliches. Some that I see in papers a lot is, I just forgot it. I often see people use each and every, and the other one is at hand that people use a lot. The task at hand, the situation at hand. At hand is a cliche. Redundant expressions, extremely unique. It can't be any more unique than individual. A necessary need, you're saying the same thing twice. A new innovation, an innovation would not be old. Past history, history can't be the future. Two twins, that's actually four people. Completely unanimous. Unanimous means everybody agreed. So what does completely unanimous mean? So redundant expressions, there's lots of these. Don't use them. Did I skip one? Nope, I guess I didn't. Okay. Citations. Use last name only and publication date in citations. Do not use the download date for the publication date. If no publication date is provided, you use N period, D period, which stands for no date. It's always better to find articles with publication dates because if they don't have one, you may not have any idea how old it is. Add the page or paragraph number to citations for direct quotes. If you have two authors, they must be listed every time in a citation. If you have three or more authors, you have to list it, all the authors, the first time. Use citation for any information that is new to you, that you read in researching the topic, that you paraphrased or summarized. I already mentioned using sources for more than finding quotes. If you didn't write it, you got to cite it. It's better to oversight than undercite. Underciting could get you into trouble because it could come up on a similarity report. If it doesn't have a citation, that could get you into trouble. So if you didn't write it, cite it. You could always start a paragraph with saying according to and put the author's name and end the paragraph with a citation, and that covers you that anything in that paragraph you didn't plagiarize. Use at least 3 main or centered headings. The first one is for your introduction. You use the title of the paper. Introduction is not used as a heading in APA. I don't know why, but it's not. Content, you make each topic a heading, and you have to have a summary or conclusion. Develop 3 to 5 word headings based on the topic. Please don't do the directions for the assignment as a heading. The heading should just be 3 to 5 words, and make sure you capitalize all the main words in the headings. You can use a level 3 heading, but I don't know why you would want to. You could use level 1 and level 2, but quite frankly, if you used all level 1 headings, you'd be fine. Here's your assignment for this week. Prepare a 1,050 to 1,400 word paper. That is basically 3 to 4 pages. And if you double space, which you need to do in APA, it's about 350 words a page. So this is a 3 to 4 page paper. Describe at least 3 different behavioral leadership approaches. Select a prominent leader, identify the dominant style, and why did you pick this person? Explain situational leadership approaches. There's several of them. Analyze potential advantage of the situational over behavioral style. Explore uses of transformational leadership. Assess 4 key behaviors. Use APA formatting. Use at least 2 business journal articles. Citation for the book. Reference for the book. Citation for 3 or more authors. First citation, you list them all. Subsequent citations, you can use the first author, and then et al., which means and others. Here are the headings I'm suggesting for the first paper. First is leadership, prominent leaders, situational leadership, advantages of behavioral, transformational leadership. You could just do the level 1 heading, transformational leadership. Really, I wanted to show you how you might use level 2 headings, which is uses of transformational, transactional, and transformational, behaviors of transformational leaders, your summary, and your references. Note that the headings are all bold after the first heading. They are not underlined. They are not italicized. They're bold. And I gave you a sample paper. I posted it, I believe, on Tuesday. It showed you APA formatting. I gave you the cover page, the header on the cover page, and all the other pages, the headings, the citations, and references. The rest of it is just filler text. What you could do is delete all my filler text. You would have the headings, and then the paper's outlined for you. I basically took all of the requirements and made it a heading. So if you wanted to use that, that's what I suggest you do. For your research, use the UOP library. I showed you how to use the advanced search. I talked about it that Abesco provides annotated listings. For business journal articles, you could go right to the websites for Business Week, Fast Company, Fortune, Forbes, HBR. HBR is the only one that's .org. The rest are .com. Be careful using Google or search or any search engine. The first things that come up are purchase paper sites, Wikipedia, blogs, and website selling services, none of which are good sources. Avoid blogs and website selling services. Focus on finding credible and reliable research. All right, I wanted to show you again the library. I went into the library. I went into Abesco Host. The arrow is pointing down because Abesco Host is the one that shows you the abstract. It doesn't just give you the title. I typed in transformational leadership and I got 5,788 articles. So then I went, oops, I think I got them out of order. Then I went into advanced search. I added transactional leadership. Let me see if I got this out of order. Okay, so then I got down to 1,090 articles. I wanted to show you on the left-hand side that I have full text highlighted. I do not have scholarly highlighted, but if you have to do a paper that has scholarly, you want to check that. You can see I also highlighted the relevance button. Underneath relevance is date. So if you really wanted to sort by date instead of relevance, you could do that. I then added behaviors. So I now have transformational leadership, transactional, and behaviors. And I get down to 429 articles, which is still too many, but at least it gets me down. The idea being that the more you can hone in on exactly what you're looking for, the better you're going to find articles. Because this is in relevance, it's more likely that you'll find something on the first page. And you can see there's 20 articles on the first page. Also wanted to again show you Google Scholar. Remember, this is for articles that are scholarly, and you don't have to use them for this class, but you certainly may have to in the future. Note that I just want articles. I don't want case law. I get into behavioral leadership, and even though I sorted by since 2018 relevance and unchecked patents, I still get almost 30,000 articles. I know no one's going to look that far, but you might find something here that is interesting, and you can see these are annotated as well. For your references, make sure your citations and references match. If the first word of your reference is the title because there was no author, that's the first thing that has to be in your citation. If you cannot list a source as a reference if it isn't cited in a paper. I already told you, you do not use a download date. Titles of books and journals are in italics. And I'm going to show you in a minute what I mean by this. Do not use the words volume, issue, and pages. List your references alphabetically, and that does not mean changing the order of authors on a published work. If the authors are in unalphabetical order, if that's even a word, you don't change them, because the meaning is that the first person listed did the most work and the last person listed did the least amount of work. I already said about Google. Website selling services are bad, blogs are bad, Google gets you into cheat sites. Dictionaries and encyclopedias are great for high school, not for graduate level work. And purchase paper sites can be tricky, but they will get you into deep trouble. They are not to be used even to just look at and get an idea. And certainly don't use it if you run out of time. Some best practices: go beyond reporting, demonstrate that you understand, use appropriate relevant sources to support your points. Start with an introduction, and you're overviewing the topics, not the paper. You're not talking about this paper will cover. You talk about the concepts that you're going to be talking about. And this is probably the most important thing I can tell you. Read your paper aloud before submitting. If you try to edit your paper silently, you will read what you think you wrote. If you read it out loud, you are more likely to read what you actually wrote, and you're more likely to pick up problems. You're going to pick up the wordos. You're going to pick up the things that are not correct if you read it out loud. So that's probably the most important thing I can tell you about reviewing your paper. We're terrible editors of our own work. So if you read it to yourself, you're not going to be doing a very good job of editing. I think I've shared this with you before, the 4C filter. It's clear. I can follow your thoughts. It's well organized. It's concise. You made the point without unnecessary words and phrases. Comprehensive, addresses all the requirements. Now, those may seem like they are mutually exclusive. Concise means you said it effectively. Comprehensive means you addressed all of the paper requirements. And cogent, it's based on evidence. You used sources. It's not your opinion. All right, so what I've done for you here is to show you how you would do different references based on what it is. You would like put a website with no author, website with author and date. That's just so I can show you. I did put it alphabetically. You can see Apple, Dudovsky, Finkelstein, Kanicki, Mintzberg, and Sinek. So what I'm showing you here, the first one is Apple, no date. It's their inclusion and diversity, and then I put the URL. A website with an author and date. You put the author, the date, and the retrieved, and therefore, and again, you have the URL. Where I'm looking, I have something covering this, but the article from Finkelstein, you can see it's Harvard Business Review. I actually highlighted it to show you that that's how you do it without the words, volume, issue, volume, and pages. You put the number, the volume, the issue goes in parentheses, the page numbers come right after the parentheses with the issue, a comma, and you just put the numbers. So the only thing there is numbers. You don't use the words volume, issue, and pages. There's the textbook that you've seen before, article from a journal website, the author, the date, the title. The journal is always in italics and retrieved, and there you have the URL. And then for a book, it's the author, the publication date, the title in italics, the place of publication, and the publisher. You do not say what kind of source it is on your reference page. I just did this so you can see how to do different kinds of references. Based on what I saw in some of the PowerPoint presentations, I don't think it's anyone who's here, but there were clearly people who did not read any of my postings, that they did not listen to the video, they did not read the information that I posted about how to do presentations, and they certainly, sometimes people have not read my feedback, I believe, on their participation, because I'm getting to see the exact same things. Make sure you read the feedback so you understand how and why points were lost. And the good news is you're halfway through, but there are still 58 points that you can earn. So we're not even halfway through as far as the points. Ask for help, not because you're weak, but because you want to remain strong. And sometimes the questions are complicated, but the answers are simple. So now I'm going to close this out. Oops. And I'm going to see if I can share something. Yes, okay. This is the paper that I posted. And this is where Andrew was asking right before we started. And on my screen, I'm seeing uses of transformational leadership is in the margin. You can see on this sample paper, I have outlined it for you, but there are also notes to you. Uses of transformational leadership is a level 2 heading. You do not have to have any level 2 headings. If you used all level 1, you'd be fine. You can see, I don't know if you can see where I've got my cursor, but leadership and the page number are there. That was done as a header. You insert header, and that's all you have to do that. Okay, so let me stop the sharing. All right, questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Jean.
So in citations, I've learned in the past where, say for example, we use Kanicki and Williams 2016. Is it okay for us to use that, and then in future citations, can we just use the date, like parentheses 2016? No.
What you can do, the first time you use a citation in a paragraph, for the text, it would be Kanicki and Williams 2016. If you use it a second time in the same paragraph, you can use Kanicki and Williams without the date. In a new paragraph, you have to use both the names and the date.
Got it. Thank you.
Dr. Audrey, this is Johnny. You had mentioned about a paragraph where you could use the reference at the end and it would suffice for the whole paragraph? Or did I
Okay.
understand that?
What I said was that you would start the paragraph. I mean, I'm going to use the textbook again just because it's the easiest thing to do. You could start a paragraph by saying, according to Kinnicky and Williams, and then you write your paragraph, and at the end of the paragraph, you write a citation, Kinnicky and Williams, 2016. That, in my opinion, covers you. You're at the start of the paragraph, you're saying it, and the end, as far as I'm concerned, you've covered yourself for that paragraph.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So at the beginning and the end, because quite frankly, it's very hard to read a paragraph when every single sentence has a citation after it. So I just want you to make sure that you cover yourself so that there's no question about plagiarism.
Great. Thank you.
And I do send every single paper through the plagiarism checker. And I didn't say anything about plagiarism checker, so let me say something because this is really important. I will send every single paper that I receive through plagiarism checker. You can send your paper through. I don't need to see your report. It will give you an idea, but it does not mean you're safe. You might get a plagiarism checker report that gives you 10%. I might get one that says 75% because mine checks every single other paper submitted to University of Phoenix. That means that if you have gone to a purchase paper site and probably the same one somebody else did, it's going to come up on my report. It's not going to come up on yours. That's one of the reasons you want to be so careful about getting into a purchase paper site. You don't want there to be any question about plagiarism. So be really careful. It is a good idea for your own edification to just put it through plagiarism checker or turn it in. And you do that through the library. You go to the library, you'll see some place where it allows you to check your papers and you submit it. It takes, if you sent it through on Sunday night, you would have the report back within, I'd say, 15 to 20 minutes. Send it through on Monday night, it could take you 45 minutes to an hour because all online students are trying to check their papers on Monday night. So if you check, I would do it earlier than Monday night, so it's just so you get the report back quickly, and that will at least give you a sense as to, you know, was there something I should have cited that I didn't?
I didn't even try it, but out of curiosity, should we be checking like PowerPoints as well through
No,
that?
you can't. They have to be papers. The only thing it checks is Word.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Do you feel ready to do your first paper?
I think so.
Yes.
Yes, I do.
Anything more you need to know about doing the paper? And of course, you know, if you do have a question, you can ask. This is not the only time. But I hope that this was helpful and makes you feel better prepared for that first paper.
It does. You were very insightful. I appreciate it.
You're welcome, Jean. Anyone else?
I think that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Okay. Then I'll see you online. I'll stay on until everybody's off just in case anybody has a question they don't want to ask in front of everybody else.
Thank you.
All right. Have a good night.
Good night.